Welcome back to another episode of 2X, the podcast where I share specific actionable insights for you to scale your business twice as fast. On this episode, I wanted to share some tips and tricks around shortening your sales cycle. So if you're not familiar with the sales cycle, it is basically the time for when you have connected with your prospect through to the time that they've actually decided to purchase your product. So how long does it take you from engaging with them through to closing them? And I would say that in general, a healthy sales cycle should be anywhere less than 3 months. And I've seen a lot of people push back when I voice that. I've had entrepreneurs say that they're in a very bureaucratic industry, they're working with government or they're working with institutions like universities, and the sales process is generally very slow. And I would say there's actually probably a few reasons why they are looking at such long sales cycles that are usually a year or even more. There are definitely ways to cut it down to less than 3 months. So let's dive into some tips and tricks and things that I've learned. So first off, the most common one I see is it might not necessarily be a feature that lengthens a sales cycle by a few months, but it is a feature that lengthens your sales cycle regardless. And that is time-based trials. So having let's say a free 14-day trial, free 30-day trial, try to do away with those. And the reason why is because if you have a free trial, prospects or clients, they will squeeze as much as they can out of the free trial. I've never seen anyone voluntarily or willingly convert within a free trial. So avoid time-based trials. The second thing to avoid is avoid feature or tier-based subscriptions. So what I mean is feature or tier-based, how they usually work is you have a free version and then you have a pro version. Maybe it's not gated by time, but what you do is with the free version, you get a certain set of features for free, and then you upgrade to the pro version to unlock more power features. And the reason why this is not something that I generally advocate for companies to do is because when you are gating your paywall based on your pro features, you are making the assumption that people are willing to pay for those extra features, that they are not satisfied alone with the free level tier, right? So if you're doing this, then you're exposing yourself to more risk, because then you have to test the assumption that those paid features are indeed features that are worth paying for, that people want it enough, and that you can get enough power users to convert. Make sense? So I'd say, yes, you by having a free and then a pro version, it does help expose people a bit to the experience, but then you risk running the rate where you risk running into the situation where people are satisfied with the free version. Cool. So what I generally encourage people to do if they're thinking about how they want to gate their experience, but yet at the same time give people a taste or a sample of what the full product is to do what we call usage-based pricing. So usage-based pricing, or UBP, is growing in popularity. And the idea with usage-based pricing is it's very simple. You basically tier your pricing model based on the volume or usage of your customer for your product or service. So I'll give some tech examples because those are very easy to understand, but this can be applied in other ways as well. So for example, they could start free. And with free, you get all the features, like a pro version. And what you do is, if you go over a certain amount of storage, let's say if you use it's free up to 10 gigabytes of storage. If you go over 10, you can upgrade to a 100 gigabyte package, and that's $10 a month. If you go over 100 gigabytes, you upgrade to let's say $18 a month, and you get 200 gigabytes of storage. So the key to good usage-based pricing is to tier it based on the right usage metric that reflects the value that your customer is getting out of your solution, right? So if you do this correctly, you will find that conversion can happen very, very quickly. So I'll give you some specific examples. So there's this tool I use called Yet Another Mail Merge. It's a mail merge tool that allows you to send bulk emails, bulk personalized emails through your Gmail inbox directly to a bunch of people, and it's all customized. And what they do with their tiering that I really like is they give you everything, it's free. And then you can send 25 messages for free. And if you have ever done a mail merge, you know that most mail merge campaigns are more than 25 emails. But once you send that 25, you get a good sense of how it works, what the reporting looks like, how it tracks the emails, those kind of things. And then usually I find that when I, for any organization that I'm running with or working with, or if I'm testing a new campaign, if I'm not already using mail merge, then I normally convert pretty much on the spot. I send the 25, test the campaign, and then after that, the tool works well, then I upgrade right away. Another effective application of a usage-based pricing approach, you can see that with MailChimp, and then I'll talk about CRM tools like HubSpot as well. So with MailChimp, if any of you have used out their mailing client, what you'll notice with MailChimp is they give you free up to 2,500 subscribers on your mailing list. And then if you go over 2,500 subscribers, then you pay, and the amount you pay depends on your subscriber list. So what is really nice and unique about that is basically they, as a provider, they scale their profitability based on their client success as well. Obviously, the larger a client subscriber base, the more successful the client is. And because of that, then they usually are more willing to pay more for a good mailing service. Make sense? HubSpot, on the other hand, they take a slightly different approach. For them, the free version is not purely based on looking at a metric that is going to convert quickly, but for them, it's about creating that stickiness. And what's interesting there is with HubSpot, basically their CRM tool is free to use. But if you are an organization that uses a CRM, you'll know that once you start using a CRM and a robust one at it, you will find that it's very difficult to migrate to another CRM solution. Because the more you use a CRM, the more data is integrated and input into it, the more processes, the more workflows are tied in, the more automation happens within the system. And once all of that is in place, when you switch to something new, you have to think about all of the workflows, the processes, the automations that will fall apart or break apart as you use a new vendor. So that is their approach with HubSpot. But definitely, I'd say, I encourage you to think about how you can look at what features or what things in your product or service are heavily used, and from there, tier based on that, because it will allow you to scale alongside with your customer in a more efficient manner. I'll give you another story from a non-tech example I can think of. So I know of this consultant who would run workshops with large companies. And what she did is she would charge based on number of attendees. And then one day she was invited to ask to speak to and run a workshop with the employees at EA Games. And obviously, if she were to price the workshop purely based on the number of attendees, it would not reflect the value that she was giving, because EA is a much larger company. They're much more established. The content of her workshop would actually impact the organization in a much greater way. And obviously, this organization also has a much larger budget as well. So because of that, she was forced to think about, oh, you know what? As I'm trying to price, I shouldn't price it just purely based on the number of employees. I should price instead around the workshop and the content and the value that it's giving to this company. So how can I track some of that? If this is a good workshop, they will want to run multiple versions of this workshop with the rest of the organization, with different departments. So I'm going to tier it based on that instead. So just think about different ways where you can give people a sample that is easy to access or low cost. And then from there, if people want more of something, then you can charge them more for it. Great. Other things that will help you shorten that sales cycle, and this applies more for those long sales cycle companies, is properly qualifying and scoring your leads. This also translates to how you define a lead and when marketing, quote unquote, ends and when sales begins. So what happens is, in most organizations, the truth is that Marketing and sales, they are one and the same, and they really tie into each other. There's no distinctive line where marketing stops and where sales begins. But with how most organizations try to do it, it is still helpful to have an understanding of when you want to engage a person, so to speak. And the reason why is because a salesperson or a sales employee, they are usually the most expensive resource for an organization. Sales reps are usually the highest paid employees, and they also get commission as well. So it's a very time-intensive, very resource-intensive activity for most organizations. So you don't want to engage with an unqualified lead too early along, because if you do so, then you end up having the sales rep needing to spend the time to nurture that lead and get them to a state where they're ready to purchase. So this is where then you need to have good qualification, things like lead scoring, in order to identify if someone is ready to move out of your quote-unquote marketing funnel and start to engage with someone in person. So what is lead scoring and how do you apply it? Lead scoring is basically the practice where you attribute a value to a client based on their activities, the things that they've done. So for example, if someone has visited your website one time, maybe you give them a single point. If someone has visited your website 10 times, they are much likely to be a warmer lead because it demonstrates that they are showing positive intent, right? They are more interested in your company or possibly more interested in buying your product or service. Lead scoring can be applied not only to website visits, it could be to actions that a customer has taken. Maybe someone has viewed your pricing page and that may be weighed differently compared to a regular website visit. A visit to a pricing page may be a 10-point instead of a single point. It could be if a customer has jumped on a demo call, maybe that's a different number. Maybe it's a 20-point. Maybe if someone has requested a quote, again, that's a positive intent behavior, right? So how do you score for some of these behaviors? I would say with lead scoring, the more accurate it will be is all dependent on how you capture that data. So if you don't have a system or practice in place to capture data, then obviously it's not going to be super accurate. So this is where usually those CRM systems come into place, where you can implement something like a HubSpot to automatically track customers' behavior on your website, or on your ads, those kind of things, or even through, how many sales meetings they've booked, what kind of conversations they've had with your reps, those kind of things. So if you're a new business or if you're new to the idea of implementing a lead scoring system, I'd say don't get overwhelmed by it. It can become very technical very quickly, and there are a lot of different behaviors and data points that you can track. At the end of the day, you don't need to get it perfect on your first try. You don't need to get all the weighing correct. You don't need to get all of the right behaviors captured. But as long as you start to capture something, you are at least one step ahead. Because even if it's something basic like, has someone subscribed to my newsletter or did someone unsubscribe from my newsletter, that still helps you very roughly weed out the warmer leads from the colder leads, right? So any form of lead scoring is better than no lead scoring. So you don't have to worry about getting it absolutely perfect. And it is a practice that has to evolve over time and be actively worked on and improved. So it's definitely dynamic, not static at all. What are some things that you can account for if you're looking to implement lead scoring? So you want to look for customer fit. So that's profiling. You're looking at things like, do they have the budget? Are they the right decision maker? Do they have the authority to make that decision? Do they actually have the need? What's their timeline? Is it something that they would implement immediately, or do they need to wait for the next fiscal year? Those kind of things. Engagement behaviors we talked about. So website, email opens, filling out a form, downloading a lead magnet, those kind of things. Intent behaviors, those are more external. So it might not be on your website or with your reps or engaging with you, but you can get some of this data through other tools like Bombora, Cognizant, or Sixth Sense, where you're actually finding out, has a customer browsed or looked for these solutions with competitors? You also want to account for things like account for recency or decay. So obviously, if someone is recently engaging with you, they are more of a priority. If someone engaged with you, let's say 6 months ago, they might not still be interested. And again, it is a catch-all. It's not that they aren't interested anymore, but they're less likely to be interested. Make sense? And then you also want to account for negative behaviors like unsubscribing, bad reviews, abusing your free trials, those kind of things. So there are other things that you can look at that are not applicable to every single business, but you can also apply lead scoring to evaluate or to kind of prioritize leads based on their purchasing time frame. If you know that these type of customers tend to make a purchase decision more quickly, then you can prioritize them. Opportunity size, maybe you know that certain types of customers tend to spend more. Complexity of the project, maybe if you know it's going to be a difficult project, you might or might not want to work more with them. Maybe it's a complex project, you get more profit out of it, but on the other side, maybe it's not worth the money. Who knows? Maybe you also want to rank based on the potential for future business. Maybe this client may want to implement other systems or other solutions that you have. And lastly, maybe there's some sort of brand value or reputation attached to closing them as a prospect. Because, for example, let's say if you get a big company like, Apple or Adidas or Nike, then it becomes much easier for you to promote and get other clients because you have that reputation under your belt. Those are just the many, many things that you can account for, and you don't have to account for all of them. And if you really want to take it even a step further, you can apply machine learning or AI to run larger comparative models to increase your accuracy of your data scoring. Lead scoring is important because once you know if someone is more qualified, then it allows you to better manage your sales resources and assign people who are more ready to convert to your sales reps. And if you want to go even further, you can assign the right people to the right sales reps, because different salespeople will have different sales styles, different personalities. And if you have a really good lead scoring model, you can match the right kind of customer to the right kind of rep to increase the rate of conversion as well. So that's getting very, very technical, but having some sort of lead scoring system in place to ensure that you're going after the customers at the right time, right? That's very, very important. Related to that, I talked a bit about the scoring for their time period, or at least their purchase time frame. Sorry. It's very important for you to understand your client or prospect's kind of purchasing cycle. And you want to understand this from two fronts. Number one, in their industry, when do they typically make purchase decisions? So for example, let's say if you look at schools, they have their year starting in September in some places or January in other places. And based on that, they usually want to have certain solutions tested and ready for deployment before the start of the school year. So you can expect that they are actively shopping around and looking for new solutions. Maybe in, let's say, if it's a January start, probably they're looking for new solutions in the summertime. Summertime in the Northern Hemisphere being, in the June, July period. And then on the other side of things, if it's a September fiscal year start, they're probably looking for new solutions, maybe even in the springtime, right? Maybe in the March, April kind of period. The other factor to consider is not only when does purchasing typically happen in an industry, you're also looking at, for a given industry, what is the typical budget cycle? For most organizations, budget cycle, fiscal year end is usually around March. And because of that, some usually their fiscal year end is December, some is March. And because of the fiscal year end, you will notice that usually it's easier or harder to get sales around this period. And the reason why is because sometimes if they have leftover budget, they will want to spend that budget right before the end of their fiscal year. On the other side of the picture, if they don't have leftover budget, and let's say if your solution is an expensive solution, they may have to wait till the new fiscal year in order to incorporate it into their budget. So you need to just understand how they typically spend their money, when they spend their money, before you can readily approach them. Because if not, if you're approaching them at the wrong time, if you're approaching them, let's say in September, and September they've started their school year, it's far from their fiscal year end, you're kind of stacking the odds against you for converting them. That said, it's never too early to engage someone in a relationship and just get to know a customer. But obviously prioritize your activities and efforts. Like if you know that this customer is not going to be ready to convert, then you shouldn't mark him as a lead or as a prospect. You can start speaking to that person, but once you mark him as a lead or a prospect, if he's actually not ready, then you are actually just voluntarily extending that sales cycle time. Because the sales cycle should be when you actively engage him to try to convert him or her. Make sense? The last tip I can give is consider how you can reduce formalities in your sales process. And I'll give you one example that will help paint this picture very clearly. So there was a software company that I worked with, and they sold a solution to hospitals to help hospitals manage their student interns that came from universities. So their solution is something that both the hospitals and university have to work with. And obviously both hospitals and universities are very bureaucratic institutions that are reputed for very long sales cycles. And they found that, with no surprise, before I worked with them, their sales cycle was about a year on average. And I actually found that was, like I said to them, a year is too long. You need to aim for a much shorter sales cycle. So I had them go out and mystery shop their competitors. And what they found is they had a competitor that offered a similar solution for intern management. And what their competitor did is, instead of doing the traditional sales route, where they would get someone to sign on a contract for a project, there was a lot of legal terms and kind of policies to ensure that they wouldn't be held liable for any issues with the platform or management of the interns. And when they look at how their competitors were doing it, their competitors actually approach it completely differently. They actually offered their platform for free to the institutions to try. And then all of the terms and conditions were all built into the terms and conditions of the app itself, or of the software platform itself. So it wasn't a contract that they would have to sign. They wouldn't need to involve the legal team. And by implementing a similar approach as what their competitor were doing, they were able to shorten their sales cycle down to about a month instead of a year. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't protect yourself, but explore ways to reduce the risk for both the prospect and yourself by seeing how you can minimize the scope of the project or shift how and where legal needs to be involved. Make sense? If you can get a simple project started, they have a much higher likelihood of continuing with you if they like your solution or service. So another example I can think of is that there's another consultant I know of, and what he would do is he taught me that, number one, you never send a proposal to a client without first meeting them in person. Because the problem with sending proposals in person, virtually, is you have no idea what resistance or what specific items your customer is humming and hawing about. And when you walk someone through the proposal in person, when I say walk through a proposal, you don't walk a document through with that person in person. It's more about actually walking through the plan of action with that person. When you do that, they have an understanding of the scope of the project, the risk involved, and then from there, when you send them a proposal, is not a surprise then. So never send it in advance. Always have that conversation first, and then you can say, okay, here is the proposal, just as formality, just to kind of solidify everything that we said. Or even better, what that consultant would actually do is he would sit down with his clients, he would whiteboard everything, he would map out the project, and then at the end of the project, he'd say, hey, if you like the direction of the whole project and what I mentioned, I'll just take a picture of this entire whiteboard, and that will be our working agreement to start. Yes, it's a bit more risky, and obviously you might want to come up with a more flushed out kind of agreement, depending on what industry you're in, what services you provide. But that may help you just start with a small project, and then from there, obviously, if things are going well, then you can send a more formal agreement, and you shouldn't have that much resistance to signing the agreement, assuming you're not putting in new clauses and trying to sneak things into the agreement that your customer isn't aware of. Make sense? So again, I'll sum it up and see what you can apply in your business and your context. But yeah, try to leverage some form of usage-based pricing. Try to avoid time-based trials or feature-based trials. Usage-based pricing is more around the volume or the amount of value that the customer gets based on what you're offering. Think about how you can implement lead scoring to better qualify your leads so that you're approaching them at the right time and considering them a sales lead at the right time. Understand their budget and purchase periods so that you're going after them at a time where they're going to be more responsive and more ready to explore new projects. Think about how you can reduce formalities as well, or legalities around the implementation of your product or solution. Right? That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.